Are you sure your investments in these brokers are safe? So the Chinese regulators announced fines on these businesses and their CEOs for conducting securities-related business in China without obtaining the necessary approval or licenses. What happened immediately after was stock prices of these brokers dropped significantly. So how do you know your investments in Moomoo, Tiger Brokers, Longbridge, Webull, eToro are safe? Let's walk through what to look out for. Number one, and the most important question to ask is, are they licensed in your country? The good news here is that most of them are licensed in the countries I'll be covering in this video. I'm specifically looking at Malaysia, Singapore, the US, and Australia. The only thing to highlight here is that Tiger Brokers and eToro does not have a license in Malaysia. And why is being licensed so important? So the main thing about being licensed is that they have to comply with the rules, which requires them to typically keep their money and clients' money, aka your money, separated in a different bank account. So even if the brokers go bankrupt for legitimate reasons, our money is safe. Second point about being licensed is insurance. But this only applies to the US and Malaysia, as Singapore and Australia does not provide any form of insurance or guarantees on investments. So in the US, the SPIC guarantees up to 500,000 US dollars, whereas in Malaysia, the CMCF guarantees only up to 100,000 ringgit. Not a lot, but it's better than nothing. What that means is that gives us further peace of mind because it covers our investments up to that amount, even if there turns out to be fraud in these companies. So the long story short is that if your broker is licensed in your country, you're safe. But the complication is that you may have to wait for years to get your money back if your broker goes bankrupt. Some examples are MF Global, which took 4 years. Cryptocurrency examples, FTX 2 years, 3 Arrow is still ongoing and it's likely to be 0. The common pattern between all three is that they have a separate business that uses borrowed money to make speculative investments, which eventually blew up. So make sure your broker doesn't do excessive trading with borrowed money, which doesn't seem to be the case here, as most of these brokers are purely brokers, except for eToro, which does has a market-making business which is higher risk, but it's not to the extent of having its own investing business. One last note, even if your investments are technically safe, the more people pull out their money, the more likely your broker struggles, which causes more people to pull out their money, and this becomes a feedback loop. Whoever stayed ends up holding the bag. This concept is also known as a bank run. That's why users have very little incentive to keep their money in a troubled broker. So